And I will start the recording. Okay. Hey everyone. It's Friday. It's 3 o'clock for some of us. For others, it's another time. Sorry if you somehow missed this show, but yeah, we have this recording. So I hope you are all okay. You might have guessed it. We had a little bit of a time zone hiccup. All my fault. Sorry for that. So with that, let's start with the usual introduction. We are amplifying F sharp, and we try to emphasize participation in the F sharp ecosystem with our little initiative. Today's session is just about that. It's Matthew Watt's session. He has done some really great work in the ecosystem, and he will talk about his experiences. It will be a little bit of showcasing, a little bit of a conversation, a little bit of questions and answers, we hope. So yeah, don't hold back any questions. Like, this session will really live and thrive from your questions. And yeah, with that, I will give over to Matt.
Yeah. Well, good morning or good afternoon or wherever you happen to be watching this. Yeah, my name is Matt. I have been, I guess I'll kind of introduce myself a little bit. I have been um, kind of a participant in the F-Sharp ecosystem probably for only about a year. I really kind of started participating mainly through the Discord, just jumped in there and tried to watch the conversations that happened and kind of skulk around and just kind of get my bearings on things as I was learning F sharp. Um, I got bitten by the functional programming bug a couple years ago, and it kind of ruined me a little bit. So I work in a C sharp shop as a closeted F sharp developer, so to speak. Which I think some people could probably relate to. It's just this like, yeah, we should be writing F sharp, but they pay me to write the C sharp. So, um, but I've tried to be an advocate for F sharp where I work, and been trying to, advocate for it in in the ecosystem and everything like that. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I just found that functional programming and learning it and applying it and teaching it is kind of re-sparked my energy for software development and for programming. So, and that was after a few years of kind of feeling bogged down with just, I'm checking in, making the paycheck and checking out. So, this is F sharp is kind of the rejuvenation that I needed to, to re-spark my joy for what we do. So as professionals. So that's kind of who I am and what I've been up to. And I think I can try and start going through some of these bullet points um, of what we want to talk about. The first thing is how I choose the projects worth putting my energy into. Um, I think that's an interesting question. And it's a little strange for me to answer that question because I've really only contributed to one project in a major way so far. And even then, that was only a handful of pull requests. But the one that I did was the FS Toolkit, which I think is a great library. It kind of has a lot of useful functionality. It's not in the core library, F Sharp Core. Um, and I was working on just like a side project that I was doing just to kind of get myself writing some F sharp. And I noticed as I was coding that there was a function in that library that was not there that I needed to use or wanted to use. And I was like, well, let me go check to see if there's any issues on that repo to see if anybody's done that. And they hadn't. So I was just like, well, I'll do it. So created an issue for it, opened a pull request, and um, just kind of waited to see what happened. And to my surprise, Jimmy reached out and was like, "Hey, this looks great, thanks." and merged it in. And it almost felt a little bit like that was too easy, right? Like that. It's like I think there's this mystique around open source contribution that's like, ooh, it's only for the cracked developers that do that open source contributing stuff. Like I'm making my 8 to 5 and all that sort of thing. But
Was it
no, go ahead. Yeah, please interrupt the questions.
was that like your very, very first pull request on GitHub, or like have you done other things over the years, but it didn't just somehow stick with you? Or...
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So I have done some open source stuff before, but not with like a language ecosystem.
Mm,
I've spent some time doing work with crypto. There's a project out there called Zcash, and I did some mobile development on an open source mobile app for them. So, but I don't know, it's something about it felt different because it was like I was contracted to work on it, so I had some funding to do it. This was just something where it was like I saw a need and I was not paid to do it, and I was just like,
so
I'll do it because
the famous intrinsic motivation thing.
I know, yeah, that's not everybody. It's a whole thing, right? But
Mm.
yeah, so that was kind of I was just like I saw the need there, and I was like, I'm bored and I want to scratch the itch, as Florian likes to say. That's kind of the language I've been using is like just scratch the itch. So it's like I want to write more F sharp, so I'm writing F sharp, and there's a missing function, easy enough to implement, do it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the FS Toolkit is a very first a library. It's just a pile of functions, and
yep,
it is. I try to keep it as simple as that. Luckily, it doesn't have too many constraints around very specific behavior. It's like it's a in and out real quick, which you can get in and do.
yeah. Which makes it very approachable as a first, an entry point of contributing, which is kind of, I think, probably why it worked out so well for me to do that. So, and it's interesting too, because as I've been reading, like, I just over the, I mean, I'm kind of coming into something with a lot of history and a lot of, there's like F sharp goes way back to 2002. And like there's so much that has happened before I got here. And so it's interesting to learn about the sorts of things and reading blog posts and seeing people re-implement some of the stuff that is, in FS Toolkit. And I'm thinking to myself, why not just FS Toolkit? So, but yeah, that's a sidebar. Um, but yeah, so I mean that's really the kind of the reason why I got into that project. There is another project that interested me that I'm thinking about what it would look like to kind of adopt it. It's a project called FSDN. I've chatted a little bit with Jimmy and Florian about this one. It's so some backstory to this is I spent some time last year um, learning Haskell last summer because yeah, and can't say that. I got to be careful to say that word in this room. I spent some time learning it because as I was initially learning F sharp, I found myself falling back into my old ways of thinking, like because F sharp is like a wonderful language in that it's very versatile and it lets you do that. But I found for learning it would be helpful for me to be forced to think in terms of, that functional first style. So, and
Yeah.
Haskell seems to be the tool to do it. So, and it certainly did. Um, and Haskell has this neat little tool called Hoogle, which is essentially a search engine for APIs where you can search via function signatures and things like that. And it's kind of like pivotal to Haskell development. Like you've got your IDE up and you've got your Google window like for for your documentation. So it's pretty sweet what they've been doing over there. And when I was working on kind of that same project where I was like, oh, there's a function missing in the FS Toolkit library. It would have been nice to have a website that I could like look for the function signature that I wanted and have it pull up. Here's FS Toolkit, and here's the signatures that match that and what you're looking for. Instead, I was on the GitHub site just digging through source code and like, okay, where's this sort of thing. But that's another thing too. I found myself digging through the source code because I was like, certain things aren't documented. So I ended up opening a pull request with a bunch of documentation as well because I was like, these functions aren't documented. Let me just you know, add Git book entries, which was a Saturday afternoon. So, but anyway, back to FSDN. It's a project that I stumbled across as I was looking for, like, is there a Hoogle in the F sharp community? And that was kind of what I got pointed to. And the last commit on it is like 8 years ago. It's like, oh shoot, that stinks. And like the live hosted site is completely dead. And so I was like, it'd be kind of an interesting project to take on to see if I could get that resurrected. So it's something that I've been toying around with a little bit here and there. I haven't made a ton of progress on it yet, but it is something that I do intend to keep
What is
hacking around on.
what is it based on? Is it like reflecting on, I don't know, a gazillion NuGet packages and having an index of these things, or how does it work? Can you share maybe
Hmm.
some implementation details?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's the thing. I'm still trying to figure out how it works. Um, eh, Another little bit of background about me is that I've only been a .NET ecosystem developer for since October of 2023. It was something that I picked up out of necessity in getting hired at my current role. Um, and so, yeah, I'm still learning. Hold on. I am still learning a little bit, quite a lot about the ecosystem and everything. And so this particular application is um, has a well, right now it's split out into two different repos. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to roll it into a mono repo because nobody got time to manage multiple different repositories.
Mhm.
Um, and then one of the repositories kind of hosts the code for the API and the web front end, which is an old Vue 2 app. Um, and so there's that piece of it, and then that API uses the other repository, which is called F Sharp API Search Engine. And you know what? Why don't I just share? Because this will be cool um, to show. Uh,
It might be even good to kind of just go through the code because even
yeah,
though
because
I've not really looked deep at it, I have so much .NET lore in my head, I could probably just answer questions.
oh yeah, I mean that would be great because I think this is my to answer your question. My first step is to understand how this code is working, so that I can actually uh, get it updated and get it redeployed and then start making enhancements and improvements. So this is the main repo. I've forked, and then there is. Let me pull up a tab for the other one. Get the Zoom thing out of here. Um, yeah. Sure, API search. Here we go. Yeah. Interestingly, this was committed to 3 years ago, which is when somebody decided to update it to .NET. So, yeah, so this is kind of the two things. So this kind of, uh, as far as I understand it so far, implements the search engine functionality and the actual database that is searched against. So it's got three projects. It's got a console-based application where you can, fire it up in console and issue queries from the console. This is the package that actually like spins up the database. And then this is the core functionality here that actually does the searching and everything like that. So really my understanding of it is kind of at a high level. In that regard, the specific functionality. Some of the details, I believe most of these are well, this actually got updated to .NET 6, so that's good. Let me see. .NET 6. I think this might be targeting Net Standard. Yeah, Net Standard. Um, so this actually got updated recently, so that's pretty neat. So there may not be a ton that I need to do here as far as like modernizing. I think the big effort there is just going to be getting it pulled over into a joined repo and getting the uh, deployment actually working and everything like that, or get at least getting it wired up with this. Um, and if anybody can feel free to step in here. I'm just kind of giving the lay of the land here. Yeah, like 8, 7, 10 years ago. So it's a pretty old project.
Yeah, I think the database is where it generates this stuff. So maybe we could look at that and just because I think that's what David's original question was like, how does this kind of work? And if you go to the generate FSX, I'm sure it's in
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So it's using fake. There's some mono involved, so that's fun.
Oh, that's just running packet probably.
Gotcha.
Search external assemblies, that's probably where it's more interesting. There's like load scripts and search external assemblies. So,
Oh,
yeah, basically this is just loading a bunch of DLLs. So basically what it does is it uses packet to generate like all the DLLs that could be referenced through these references. Because basically, like whenever you have a dependency, there's dependencies of dependencies, and this was probably the easiest way to do this 8 years ago. NuGet was pretty bad about letting you see all this stuff, especially in the
okay.
dot framework time. So this probably like looks through a bunch of these and also just appends a bunch of BCL, which what this looks like. These are base class libraries. So these are the things that are included that you never have to reference. These are just there.
Right,
Or they're kind of there.
right.
It's a weird. Sometimes you have to reference them, sometimes you don't. It's a weird, annoying thing. I'm guessing it probably what he mentioned. Yeah, so it finds a tool.
Yep.
Finds a
A
tool
tool
and they
and
runs
references the database
interesting.
executable.
So there's like
No.
so is that must be a source file that it builds. So it actually just allows you to take in any assembly and generate like a list. Okay. So it creates like a config and then runs it. Okay, so then this is kind of like just the executor for this is like the script around being able to do the database stuff. It looks
Yeah.
like.
And
So
this
the actual
generates.
code is still probably under source. Yeah, because all this is doing is just calling executable and then probably like storing it in some big JSON file or something.
Yeah, in fact, I think what it does actually there's another repo. Yes, here we go. What they're doing actually is they are doing a GitHub release on this repo, and it's literally just a zip file of the database.
Interesting.
So they put it there, and then I think when the front end deploys, they pull that. I think that's probably going to be in the build FSX here. Yeah. So they copy binaries, grab the solution file configuration, npm stuff. I actually was able to get this build FSX updated to more modern fake syntax. Um, Copy API database. Yeah, so it pulls it from Packet, from that repository, that zip file, and then it uses it to generate the database, I guess.
All right, it just
Or
probably runs. It probably just like is able to access it somehow.
yeah, actually, it looks like there's targets for grabbing it, uh, generating it, and then uploading a new copy of it to that repository. Yeah, because they're doing some OctoKit stuff down here. Um, yeah. So I mean, it's a big old project. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. I suppose it's all relative. So this is the other thing about this, that this project that's been a little bit interesting for me. And it would be a good kind of segue into, I'll stop sharing for now. A good segue into the kind of what worked, what didn't. Um, and so far, what has worked for me in the F# ecosystem is to just start small, like really small. And so that's kind of why the FS Toolkit stuff actually worked out, was because it's just like, hey, it's documentation. Hey, it's a couple missing functions here or there, that sort of thing. Um, I think what hasn't worked so far is for me has been like trying to bite off more than I can chew. And so it's kind of a balancing act, because I've gotten some encouragement from some of you guys. It's like, hey, this would be a good project for you to take on to really, exercise your chops. And I agree, but it's this balancing act between like, okay, I want to not make sure I don't take on more than I can chew, and also, do something impactful and meaningful. So, I think the story here for this one is going to be that, just break it up into small, meaningful chunks, and you know, you get solicit feedback frequently. So, um, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting project, and I think if I can get it back up and running again, I think it'd be something that would be really valuable for people. Hopefully, anyway. Even in the Discord, it sounds like some people have been like, "Hey, is there anything like this?" So
Has
it's
there
kind of
has there been any sign of life from the original authors, or are they completely gone from the scene?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as I know, the latest update was that commit 3 years ago on the search engine API, where
Hmm.
they upgraded it to .NET 6, but that went unreleased. I Before I even forked the repositories, I tried reaching out to every single one of them. I found an email address or
Yeah.
found them on social media or whatever, and tried connecting with them, and gave it a couple weeks just to give them a chance to respond. And I hadn't heard anything back, so I
Okay. Okay.
just stepped
So
forward and
really,
forked it.
really an abandoned place, and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, all right.
Yeah,
and
it
I
used to
think
be inside of Ionide as well. Like we used to actually consume it or use it as well, and then we've had to disable that for a long time. So it'd be great to
oh,
put that back in.
see, that's interesting. Because okay, so there's some context to that. Jimmy and Florian had both mentioned that in kind of my conversations with them, like that would be cool to put into Ionide. And I didn't know that it used to be in there, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
commented out for probably like 6 years at this point, but
Okay. Um, okay, well, that's an interesting thing. So do you think maybe it would be something that would help me have a better, focus? Do you think it would be more useful if I spent some energy and time on, getting it to a place, where it would be consumable from Ionide? Like maybe making a list of
um,
what it would need, to be that, and then do that, because I feel like that would be more immediately useful for the ecosystem. And then, as I have time, try and get the actual web front end spun back up again.
so it kind of depends because it looks like what's happening with the website is it kind of chooses which libraries it was picking and what it would kind of index.
Yeah.
Um, what I think would be useful for Ionide is not only to have like here's like the 50 or 100 most popular F sharp libraries or whatever. I know that kind of get, but it's also like it would potentially be able to index your local used dependencies. That's something I think we
Ooh.
were missing,
So
which means we have a
are you thinking having a library version and a .NET tool version of it, and all of that
probably, yeah. Yeah.
also can be used via a web interface? Like I
Yeah.
remember Google had a CLI as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because yeah,
yeah.
Google, you can like spin up your own local one.
Hmm.
There's a live instance out on the web, and then you can host your own locally and query it, or you can even host, like, you can spin up your own, and host it at a domain or something like that. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah,
I think that's something we could do later. I think just getting it like running and then slightly modernized, like bare minimum modernized to get it to like just be able to ship easy, I think is probably
yeah,
step one. And then we
yeah,
could think about all the cute things that we could do high in the sky.
yeah. Well, yeah, because I immediately when I thought about like adopting this project, my brain went wild of like, okay, what could I, what could we do with this? Like, all right, get the front end rewritten from Vue to Fable and do all this stuff. And it's just like, well, who's got the time for that, friend? So so yeah, yeah, maybe we can sync up on that on kind of some tasks that would be because that does change my trajectory of things a little bit for that. And I think that would probably be a good direction to go because a lot of people like it's basically ironite or bust for F sharp development, as I understand it. So
That's not true.
maybe
Like
maybe
there's a
that's a
lot.
controversial take.
No, there's a lot of things that INI is not doing well because it exists in its own vacuum. Like one is like if you have C sharp projects, like the interop between those two is just still very frustrating in VS Code.
Oh
Also,
yeah,
VS Code sometimes decide, recently the Microsoft has decided to start enforcing its licenses, so people that have been using Cursor and stuff can't use the C sharp library anymore. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
there's that. And also the debugging experience is also just better in like Writer and VS or Visual Studio.
Right.
VS Code debugger has a lot, but we don't control that. That's actually part of the C sharp
Dev kit.
ecosystem. So
Yeah, I actually disabled the dev kit the other day when I was working on some F sharp stuff because I was like, it's completely hosing my experience. I will say, one bug fix that went in recently that I really appreciated was that the the solution explorer doesn't yank focus.
yeah, that was
I know
annoying for so
I
long.
I noticed it, but never really bothered to like say anything about it. But then like a week later, I saw a pull request go on that was like, "Don't steal focus," and I was like, "Oh, that's a nice feature." So anyhow, yeah, I think I would be a good entry point for the updates that I make to that. So, because then that it just allows me to focus on one piece of it. Because like I really like I really need to understand how the like the database repo, like the actual core repo is doing what it does, and try and you know get things a little bit more modernized there, to be able to support something like Iodide. So
Yeah, I think it'll be easy to, I think it'll be better to kind of like make sure that we just get it running and then figure out like its core, because like at that point you can kind of figure out its core components and then we could probably simplify because like it is
right,
probably a little more complex than it needs to be. I don't know
yeah,
why the decisions were chose that way, but also a project started 10 years ago. A lot of different things were around, right? Like there wasn't even like GitHub Actions. There like .NET
yeah,
Core was still kind of like a weird flaky thing 10 years ago. Like you could use it, but it was
yeah.
still kind
But
of eh.
choose mono instead, right? Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, Mono was more stable than .NET Core. It's for a while too. Like it hard to believe nowadays, but that was a reality. I used Mono exclusively for a while, and that was
yeah,
kind of the case.
yeah. Yeah. So that's great. I think that gives a little bit of direction to kind of the work for that. So that is something that I hope to take up and do. So and since there will be kind of some integration with Ionite, maybe I'll sync up with the developers of that project and get familiarized with the code base there. Because I think you're right. Like I think the big daunting thing is just like not understanding all of the bells and whistles and flags that are on that project. And it's just like, do we need to have all of this? Uh, it it's like what are the core things that need to be exposed from this to support the functionality that we want. So yeah, cool. So let's see. Do we want to like pause for any questions or anything like that?
Don't think I've seen many.
Okay, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't blabbing on and not giving people a chance to chime in.
Yeah, I've not see. I don't see any in YouTube, and I don't see any in the chat. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free.
Please interrupt. Um, Yeah, so I've got these kind of 4 bullet points from the session here. So that's kind of how I chose the projects, what has worked, what has not worked. This third one is interesting. So what the F Sharp community should improve to attract new talent. I don't feel like I have any authority in any sort of way to answer this question. So maybe this is a good place to open that up to conversation because I feel like the Discord has kind of buzzed over the last week with this kind of conversation, and so maybe this would be a good place to talk about some of that. I don't know.
I think like because like when you're so deep into something, it's like you kind of forget where the pain points are because you just know you have it indexed in your head. Like you have this thing is here, so just do this. I think that's kind of like the disconnect that a lot of the longer time veterans like myself have with like knowing. And so having a new person point out like this is missing, like FSDN, for instance, it's like, yeah, that would be great. But like what other things? Like what's when you hit a roadblock, like what are you stuck on? Like why are you stuck? What's causing that? How can we make sure that we expose those getting those unstuck points as quickly as possible?
Yeah, um, yeah. There's a lot there. I guess it's also a little bit hard for me to answer that question because this is kind of like my first foray into a language open source sequence system. Like my prior experience has been like cryptocurrency stuff like that, which I mean I guess involves some tooling and stuff, but it's kind of my first foray into languages. So um, I don't know. I guess one of the things that I think could be potentially scary to somebody coming in is um like the F sharp identity, right? It feels like a little bit right now F sharp is experiencing a um I I don't want to use the word crisis because I don't think it matches, but it's definitely going through a period of like who are we, like, and what's the future, like where are we going? And I think one of the things that can happen when um like you said, like you've been in the ecosystem for so long, I think it's easy to just like get comfortable. And one of the things that I don't know, I guess one of the things that I always felt was F Sharp's strength, like was the curiosity aspect of just like, I wonder if you could do this, or I wonder if you could, what it would look like to do this. I read so somebody had posted the like the brief history of F Sharp um, in the Discord the other day, and I was like, that looks interesting. I'm going to read that. And it was really interesting to me to hear that the kind of inception of F Sharp was from Don of, I wonder if you could get OCaml running at .NET. Could you do that? And he just kind of went and rolled with it, and that's a really cool thing. And I think that curiosity and that inquisitiveness is a strength of the functional programming community, like as a whole. Just like, man, how can we do things better? How can we really lean into doing things correctly and all those sorts of things? And so I
Can
don't know,
we
maybe go ahead.
can we can we just briefly go back to the crisis thing because it's
Oh,
kind
sure.
of interesting to me. Like for you, what gave you that expression? Like was it some Discord content or was it some web content, some like what some social media thing? Like what was it that made you think like that?
Well, I think it was a little bit the Discord, right? There was a big
Mm.
long like conversation that happened the other day, and it was a lot of bringing up, here are the problems, here are the issues, here's some of the headwinds that F Sharp faces, and maybe it was a bit of a personal like just interpretation for me of, oh man, like there's a lot
That's
go
fair. That's fair.
yeah, there's a lot going against.
I was
So
just interested in like yeah. I mean I have I share your your opinion. but yeah, like my reasons are different, but
Well,
it's still
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And I think I think maybe my perspective on it is, coming in like really excited. Like I said, the the functional programming and F sharp in particular, I was like, okay, I'm excited. Look, let's go get involved. Let's go do this. And then, seeing conversations of like, well, F sharp's glory days are behind us, which is no, like there's, I don't want to I don't want to downplay anybody's thoughts or experiences because that's important and that's valid. I think it was just for me a little bit like jarring as somebody who, was, freshly motivated and driven, and then coming in and being like, oof, some people are kind of just, I don't know, like it. I don't know. It's like the hindsight 2020. Like it's easy to look back and think that all the best is behind us, but I think one of the things that could help maybe is just like a fresh spark of energy. I don't know what that would be. I have no idea. Um, and I
People
and
like
I
you.
I think that's you. That's you.
Oh, okay. Well, sure. I mean, and I like to get people excited about stuff. Like I've been at the office here. I've been trying to, you know, get better at explaining concepts just on the fly. So I'm doing some new hire mentoring right now, and I'm using that as an excuse to like, all right, let's whiteboard. I'm going to explain what map is all about or what bind is all about because it validates my understanding of it, and then it also helps me to like get other people excited and interested in learning themselves. So yeah, I'm glad to like help people get excited. Um, so yeah, we just need more of that from more people. And the interesting thing is that the ecosystem has had those people in the past. Like I've been very influenced by guys like Scott Balash, guys like Mark Seaman, and these guys that write fantastic content. And what's the next thing? Like how are we gonna move forward and get more people excited about it? Because yeah, it's just like if we really believe that functional programming is like valuable and allows us to deliver really robust, solid software, like
I,
let's just do it,
yeah.
right? I don't know.
Like I think functional programming as a whole movement or as a whole paradigm, so community has just failed to make good PR like OO did. Like
Yep.
um the last a couple of weeks ago in Berlin there was the BobConf and there was a whole talk about like how we failed as a community to really tell people, hey, this is actually a better way to manage complexity. This is a
Hmm.
better way to build um, complex maintainable systems. We don't want to like don't play OO, it has its role and all that, but yeah, we really failed in explaining the benefits of functional programming on a
Yeah.
large scale, and that's not just F sharp; it's all functional languages kind of failed. And it I mean we made the other languages pick up features from us. Like absolutely, we succeeded in this, and it like there is a reason why all the OO languages got more and more functional features.
Yep.
But as a whole, yeah, the paradigm functional has not really succeeded, and yeah, it,
Yeah.
it's not just F sharp. I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
definitely Scala has hit that wall for a while too. Like Scala basically Scala and Clojure sit in the same space as F sharp in the Java ecosystem. They more or less had the same exact struggles as us.
Yeah. Uh, the the uh, the analogy that I thought of when you mentioned like the OO languages adopting functional features is you know, uh, like Vine and TikTok inventing the short form, and then those things getting absorbed in as features into bigger platforms like YouTube and Instagram and all those sorts of things, right? Like if you design and build something that could then just be adopted as a feature in a bigger thing, like you might go extinct. Obviously, the analogy breaks down because TikTok is still thriving and alive and well, but like that, I mean, there's some truth to it, right? Like there's, you know, the designers of C Sharp, for example, were like, oh man, they're doing some really cool stuff. Let's try and figure out how we can pull some of that into what we're doing. Um, and yeah, and so like that, I guess that is the question that we face in the industry is like, where do we go next? Like, how do we? Because I don't think I don't think we because the industry like the functional programming community failed in that way. I don't think that means that we give up, right? Because there's still a thriving community of people that are like, this is a better way to write software, it seems, right? Like obviously there's opinions left and right about what that means. Like this is better. Um, any good engineer will tell you it depends. Um, but yeah, like where do we go from here? How do we do better? How do we convince more people um, that this is the way? I don't know. I think for me, my role in it is to just be excited about myself and derive enjoyment out of it and write good software, like just write rock solid stuff, and teach other people how to do the same. I find a lot of fulfillment in that career wise. So um, yeah, but that's just like my opinion, man.
Yeah, that's similar. Like it's a lot about just this does change your way of thinking, and even when you go back to other languages, like you have a very different way of thinking about how to structure things, and it's easy
Mhm.
to like see multiple solutions that could solve a problem rather than maybe the one gifted by Microsoft only that
Yeah,
everyone seems to love way more than they should.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even like the Blue book, the DDD book, has an entire chapter dedicated to like, hey, write business logic as pure functions. It's like, hey, that's functional programming. And so like, yeah, like that's my encouragement to people too. In fact, I did a lunch and learn here that was that was entitled "Write Better C Sharp Code by Thinking Like an F Sharp Programmer," because you can like there are really solid, and that's kind of like where my F Sharp Advent blog post came from of just like these are the kind of five things that I've noticed about functional programming that are like in principle things that you could apply in any language and you should try to because they solve a lot of problems and prevent a lot of major issues that can happen, and that sort of thing. And I don't know. Maybe that's the just the stark reality of this, and maybe we're just doomed to be the idea pool that the major OO languages pull from and steal from, and then we're left
Until
with our,
and until they have immutability by default, they're not gonna survive. I think they're gonna survive, but they're gonna still just keep hitting the wall on problems that they can just avoid.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
expressions like
oh yeah,
everything is an expression. If you don't start with this principle, it's hard. No.
yeah. That actually was, I first got introduced to everything as an expression through Kotlin, because I started my career as a mobile developer and was doing iOS development, and had to do a little bit of work on the Android side as well. And they were kind of the company that I was working for was transitioning from Java to Kotlin, and that weirded me out at first. I was like, what? It's like everything's an expression. Like my if construct resolves to a value. Like that's weird. I'm not used to that. And then once you know it, and once you realize the benefits of that, you start to miss it in other languages.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, oh boy, yeah. Um, yeah. Okay. Let me make sure we're getting our bullet points. What lessons did I learn along the way, and what's next? I mean, I think we kind of covered a lot of that of just like the lesson is that uh, you know, if I base my participation in this on how many people applaud me or how many, new users of F Sharp come into the ecosystem, I'm gonna burn out fast. Because you can do all the convincing in the world, and the ecosystem has been trying to do all the convincing in the world since Don was like building F sharp back in the day. And some people just don't want to be convinced, and that's totally fine. And so what I'll do is I'll enjoy what I do and try to get better at what I do every day, and help people to do the same. And I think F sharp is a great vehicle for doing that. So that's kind of the lesson that I learned. And it just keeps me sane, right? Because you know, if I'm the guy that is going to be at the office in a C sharp shop being like F sharp, let's go, and people are like, no, I don't care. Uh, like that's tough. But if you just do it because I'm like, I do it because I enjoy it, it's kind of a win-win. So yeah, that would be my advice to people is just find what you enjoy. For some people, that's going to be Ruby. For some people, that's going to be C sharp. For some people, that's going to be you know, Lisp. I don't know what your itch is, but do what you enjoy and try and bring others along for the journey and share back with what you learned. So
Yeah, that's a really good take on it all. We have a question in the chat from DML. What are some of the easy wins in terms of porting F sharp or functional concepts to writing C sharp code? I find that I end up writing a lot of single method interfaces.
that's a great question. Some of the easy wins. Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit on a really common thing that you'll run into is that once you kind of understand functional programming concepts, you'll start to think to yourself, well, why do I need an interface? That's just a function. Like it's just a function definition. So I find myself not even using interfaces in C sharp, to be honest with you. I'll just use the func delegate syntax to define like, hey, I've got a workflow and I need a function that does this, and then I can just pass that implementation in. Um, I don't think I've got like the way of doing the functional programming in C sharp, but that's one thing that I find myself addressing that question in particular is using that func syntax. It's very useful. Because yeah, like that it just when you start thinking in a functional mindset, you find yourself thinking a lot, that's just a function. It's a function. So
Yep.
if any of you guys want to chime in on that question, I think
That's kind of the
I'd be
same.
interested.
You kind of end up with like you either go down the path of you think of function, you just either say this is a function to accept, or it's an interface, and you're just comfortable with making single case interfaces because you want to put a name to it. Because sometimes this is kind of like an operation that seems to be like something that you would want to potentially swap out, but even then, like you don't necessarily need to.
Yeah.
It's fine. A name can be a name can help identify things like creating a bunch of interfaces can be good if you like naming things, but it's a depends on kind of how you want to organize your stuff. That's more or less that's kind of a taste thing.
Yeah.
I
That's actually, sorry, go ahead. You got it.
I think like very basic stuff like pure functions, having like a collection of C sharp pure functions, immutable stuff, state management in a functional way, like more like transforming state values from one to the other instead of having all this state handling via objects can make life easier. I mean, you have to keep your own context in mind for all that, but like when I did a lot of C sharp in the past, these like very basic principles helped quite a lot in keeping complexity manageable. And if you really want to go deeper, there were whole books about functional programming in C sharp. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can look down on these things because it's not the real deal, but if you have to just make a living with the tools you have, it's still an improvement. So
Yeah. I've seen some people make the argument that like doing monadic stuff, and sorry, I used the M word. Uh, there's some people that would say, well, that's not idiomatic C sharp, like write idiomatic C sharp, and there's some validity to that, but like you said, like whatever helps you to write code that is maintained, you have to keep your domain in view. Like whatever helps you write code that is maintainable, testable, and extensible, right? Like that's the key there. I did actually want to go back to something that you had mentioned, Jimmy, because there's one thing in uh, there's one thing in F sharp that I haven't quite found an analog to in C sharp that I miss, and that's the ability to define a like essentially what you talked about, giving a name to a function signature. So like doing type name of my function type equals this. The only thing that I could find in C sharp was doing a using alias, but that's not quite the same, and it's like scoped to a file, and so I guess interfaces would
Those
be
are
one
the
way to do it.
same. Yeah, those are basically the same. Like an alias, like that's how you do aliases in C sharp, I believe.
Yeah, which I always felt was a little bit unsatisfactory because it's not. I mean, can you do global like using aliases like that in C
I
sharp?
don't know. C sharp has changed quite a bit of their semantics in the last like
Sure.
5 years, so maybe.
Yeah. Because the other thought that I had was to define a delegate, like a custom delegate type. But then I was like, man, I don't see a lot of people defining custom delegates these days. A lot of people just use func, but I kind of want to give it its own name. So would using a delegate in that way be idiomatic? Again, the idiomatic argument.
Well, the ASP.NET team that has the bare what's the minimal API, they use delegates as their things, and for better or for worse, delegates can be a little too expansive on their arc on how much they accept. So you might want to look into see if that's good boundaries or not, because like you can easily just be like, oh, I'm just going to shove whatever I want into here, and hopefully we figure it out. Like
Right.
that's not what you want. You probably want to be
Right.
a little bit more structured.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I stopped a coworker of mine who has years more C sharp experience of than me, and I asked him the same question, and he wasn't quite sure. So I was curious about that. That is a good question. Like because like we mentioned before, like a lot of us are C sharp devs that do F sharp stuff in their free time or for side projects and stuff like that. So I think getting that story of like how can you apply these principles in your day job is important as well. So that was a good question.
All right. I think we covered quite a lot today.
Yeah.
Anything we missed? I think we had a good walkthrough.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we covered quite a lot. Thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate you letting me come on and chat and share a little bit about kind of my journey and what's been going on. So hopefully it inspires other people to jump in and just start helping out where they can and enjoy doing it and learn a lot.
Thanks for
Yep.
coming on, because I
Thanks for
mean it's
sharing.
also good to see our efforts trying to have someone take hold, and it's good to see that come back. Because it's always we put out a lot of energy into the ecosystem, and it's like never know who's benefiting sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've benefited. So thank you for doing what you guys do.
All right. I think we wrap it up for today then. Thanks everyone for joining. If we inspired you, get in contact with us. You know the channels where you can reach us. And with that, yep. See you next week.
Thanks, everybody.